Next up here, we're gonna build a guitar out of a slab of wood. I've had this mango piece for 10 years, maybe even before I was on YouTube. I bought some koa from a guy in Hawaii and he had this piece and I thought it looked pretty cool. There's a little bit of figure in here, and then on this side, this piece is sort of flat sawn perfectly so I can get a nice quarter sawn neck if I turn this. It's got a little bit of some checking here. This is 12 inches. This down here is 10 inches. It's a pretty heavy piece of wood in total, but I think once I cut it up along some of these cutouts, it'll lighten up in terms of each individual piece, and I'm hoping this isn't too heavy of a guitar. I'm also going to lighten this up slightly with some of that new construction technique. I'm going to build an Explorer for you guys. I found this template in my pile of templates as I was doing some of the giveaways, and I figured I had drawn an Explorer template on this years ago, and if that was the initial thought, well, let's go ahead and just use that across the whole body. The figure is pretty cool. I think I've got some pretty neat cuts in here. You can see that as it passes through. So as I've let this piece of wood sit and age, the color in the figure's gotten a little bit deeper. So this became really no figure at all. This really popped out, so I know this piece is pretty clean for a neck. It won't twist or warp. What I'll do is I'll cut this out, resaw it, get the neck going at the same time. Shouldn't take all that long to actually build this since I've got the templates and everything all set. So I think I'll do a top and a back, a top and a back, and then I'll use some of these pieces piecemealed across to get the outline of the body. So it'll be like a hollowed out Explorer, which should be pretty cool. We'll put on the GoPro and begin to cut this out on the bandsaw upstairs.
I know you guys hate me using the GoPro with a lot of motion fast forwarding, and I tried to stabilize the videos here and not fast forward them as much, so I've got a bunch of little clips. I had to cut the neck blank out first. I needed a little bit of room on the bandsaw. I couldn't make all these cuts as I laid it out, so I'm cutting off where some of that checking is, and this allowed me to cut off that neck blank. So I've got a Japanese pool saw and just cutting this so I can take this back over to the bandsaw and cut out that blank. So put that through, get the cut, pop it off, and there's the neck blank. We'll let that sit for a couple weeks, and we'll come through and cut off the rest of the body here. That's some of the junk. Take this outside with my Makita cordless saw. This thing is great actually. It's got a real thin kerf blade and it powers through most of everything. So we'll cut this and then take it back to the bandsaw and do some more trimming. I thought I got all of the checking out. That piece is especially bad. And I still have a little bit left on the corner. You can't tell in this video, but I've got to put a little bit of a edge on the top where there was some bad checking. So I'll run this through the joiner, get a flat edge, and then begin resawing. So this is my Laguna 16 HD bandsaw, 3/4 inch blade, and we're going to make 4 cuts for a 1/4 inch top. Bandsaw was laboring a little bit, needed to put a new blade on. Cut 1, and I did cut 2. And then we'll run this through the drum sander. Feed this through a couple times, get it dead flat. We'll then take this back downstairs and glue this up using some Tight Bond wood glue. We'll glue this up. That top corner I've got to glue on a little section. Didn't film that, but you can see that later when I do the cutout. Just a little bit of checking. So we'll put in a fresh piece up there. Pinch this so it's tight. I've got some Craftsman parallel clamps there. And we'll begin to cut this out to shape. So that's the Explorer template. It's got a screw on the top and some double stick tape on the bottom. We'll just slowly cut this out as close as we can to the template without nicking it. And we'll walk this back upstairs outside to my top bearing bit, Craftsman table router, flip that on, and route out to template shape. Trick is to go slow, keep your hands away from the bit. And the fun part is beginning to lay this out. So I've got both plates done. And I think I'm going to do sort of 3 braces on the top, 1 center beam that's about 4 inches, and then sort of 2 going out. So I begin playing with this a little bit to see how I'm going to do this. I've got a couple extra pieces of wood. I need 4 inches there as the center strip, which is that piece. And we'll see how this looks. So I'm measuring now to the exact thickness I need to resaw this to upstairs. We'll make sure that one piece is flat. And then we'll take it to the bandsaw and then start cutting this. That's 4 inches for the main centered post. And then these are the arms, the feeder arms that we're going to sort of extend through. This thing is like 1.5 inches, and each plate is 1/4 inch, so that measure up perfectly. Maybe a little bit less. I think it's 1.25 inches, and then 2/4 inches is 1/2. So that's 1 3/4 inches. So I'll get all this lined up. Make sure all the cuts are right, and then we'll run this through my drum sander again, get it dead flat. So that's the center board, and then the legs that are going to run down the sides. And again, I'm wearing my GoPro and not fast forwarding. I'm also cutting the video. I make a couple passes. So we'll start laying this out. Got to make a compound cut for that top curve. So I'm using this one piece of wood, trying to figure out what that curve is, and then taking it upstairs with a cut. I actually had to do a couple cuts to get this right. That was way too tight. Had to play with it in my head. But I do have a clamping system for angle joints like that, and this worked out perfectly. I've had that clamp for, I think, 15 years, and this is the first time I'm using it. It's one of those things you buy that you just don't use. But this application was perfect. Tighten it down, clamp it up, and now I've got it at the right angle. So we'll start trimming those other pieces to fit the body. I drew what angle they're at, a little bit less to cut later. And the way I'm going to clamp this, I just needed it to fit right. So we'll do an outer piece that's a little bit thicker on each side. That center piece, middle piece for some stability. And then the center is that 4 inches for the bridge post, so I get a full contact bridge into the body. And I've got that angled piece for the top, and then I'm going to put 3 ribs on the bottom that you'll see here in a second. Put some wood glue on that first piece, lay a pencil so I know where it's going to sit. Glue that down, clamp it. This is the centerpiece. I'm going to clamp it directly to that table. And there's the middle between the middle. I don't know what to call that. Just a brace. And I clamp it down to my work table here. I've got that big piece from the wine press clamp that I pull down and hold it, and then use some of my bigger clamps to hold it across. So a little bit tricky, but got it to work. So let that dry 24 hours. Come back with the compound piece, glue it down, and then lay this out on my other workbench. And this is the piece that's going to be dead flat, and then when I bend that top over, we're going to bend it on this side. Try something different. So then here are the 3 braces in the middle where that wing is, that far extending wing. I cut them and got them all set. Use an old template to hold them down. And let that dry for, again, another 24 hours. And then where we're going to bend it, could have never done this with a full body, but I'm going to get my plane it down a little bit, and then sand it. And I can get that curve pretty nice. If I'd done this with a full body, it would have been a huge pain, but since I've got sort of 4 brace points, it's just something to play with. So before we glue on the top, we're going to trim the body, screw down the top, and clamp it. Couldn't film that whole process, was a huge pain, but I think I pulled out every clamp and just pulled it down slowly. Still use the same wood glue and just got that sort of base and then clamped each side going out slowly and got it to peel down nice. So I got that tension in the top. So that's part 1 of the body. We will do part 2 here next.